Tony, I did a straw poll. Over the last 40 years, you won probably the most interesting man in broadcasting in Chicago. And, of course, I had you as a teammate in 79, 80, and 81. You won more games than anybody in the history of the game. Last year, the White Sox beat the Orioles 7 straight. And then you had 2019, 8 straight. And then the Orioles play about as good as they have. Your impressions of the Orioles this year?
Well, I think the Orioles are a team with some very good young players and some nice building blocks. And the question is, where are you going to go from here? Because when you look at some of the guys, first of all, I believe that if you're going to build around anybody, build around your catcher. And Adley Rutschman is a good guy to build around. You were very fortunate. You had the worst record, true, but you also had a guy that you can take and use here for a long time. I think he handles pitchers well. So that is the initial building block. You have some other guys out there. I mean, the outfield the other day, Mullins was terrific in center field. Hayes was great in right field. Santander made a great catch in left field. So you have some pieces. Right now it's a question, will the starting rotation hold up? Will you get any of the hurt guys back? But the bullpen looks good, and as we know in this day and age of baseball, bullpens are the key. You guys seem to have some pretty good guys out there.
Yeah, they've had a terrific year. I really didn't know you in 1971, but you started with the Giants, and you got to play with McCovey and Willie Mays and Bobby Bonds, and then you had that guy that kind of did that a little bit, Gaylord Perry, I think,
and Juan Marichal.
Okay,
yeah.
So what was that like?
Well, getting into the major leagues is something that you dream about, and getting to a ball club with 4 Hall of Famers, and Bobby Bonds was a member of the 30-30 Club 5 different times. So I walked onto that club and I looked around, and it was kind of shocking because my first game in San Diego, I remember holding the baseball and looking out and realizing that it was Willie Mays going to run down my mistakes. I mean, that's pretty heady for a kid 23 years old coming out of Cleveland, Ohio. But slowly you get to the point where you start to understand things. However, in those days they had a big fastball. Then the fastball went away after 2 years at Candlestick Park. There's still 10 miles an hour on my fastball on that mound somewhere, wherever it is in Candlestick Point. And eventually I had to kind of learn how to pitch. By the time I got to Baltimore, things had changed. I was a different type of pitcher, and I got to a team finally that understood how to win. And as a group, everybody on that team realized that they were in it together. It was more of a team than any place I had been before. And what I realized and what I thought being on an also-ran team was I always thought what was good for me, by definition, was good for the team. And I found out in Baltimore it was just the other way around. What was good for the team, by definition, was good for me.
Well, I mean, I had a long love-hate relationship with Earl Weaver.
Yes.
I mean, other than you calling saying that he had a Napoleonic complex in
Classic.
Sports Illustrated or whatever, what was your remembrance of Earl as a manager?
I remember that he was a guy who dearly wanted to win and would do anything to do it. And later on, we talked a lot about his approach, and he felt there was a different way to get to every player. Now, granted, at that point, he was not the nicest man around, and the team didn't like him particularly on a daily basis. However, that being said, the #1 goal is to win. If you're going to be a professional, you win. Earl did whatever he could to try to win, and he put together a lot of very good ball clubs.
Yeah. Okay, so in 1982, you worked with Cosell, Al Michaels, and Bob Uecker. That's kind of when you start your broadcasting career. Monday Night Baseball. That must have been quite interesting.
Well, it was interesting because basically what they said was, here's a headset. I know you've never done this before, so we're going to give you 3 games and see what happens. And the worst thing was that I would look like a fool in front of 30 million people, and then I would give the headset back. But here it is 40 years later. I still have the headset, although this, I believe, is yours. But, yeah, I'm still doing it. I still love it. I'll do it as long as I do love it, and I've been fortunate, as you have, to be able to make your living all these years at something you truly love, something that's been part of your life. It's been part of my life. And as baseball lifers, there's not a lot of us left. Those of us who are left have to cherish every day because we really never know when someone's going to come and take the headset away.
Yeah, well, that and maybe one sentence from getting fired. So then you go to the Cubs. You work with Harry Kerry. And then, of course, when you came with the White Sox, Hawk Harrelson, I mean, 2 icons. I mean, Hawk's alive. Harry, I think, died in 1998. You wrote a book about Where's Harry, I think. What was it like working with Harry Kerry?
Well, the book contained most of the funny things. It wasn't a kiss and tell book. It was the funny things that Harry would bring to the booth on a daily basis. Look, he was a huge personality. Hawk was a huge personality. There were different broadcasters, but they both had one thing in common, and that is the fandom truly loved them. they went about it different ways. Harry was much more flamboyant than Hawk. Hawk was pretty much a straight baseball guy, and when things didn't go well, Hawk didn't talk a lot. I mean, he used to get bitter in the booth, but the fans here really love him. I mean, this is still a Hawk Harrelson town. Harry broadcast on both sides of town and in St. Louis, as you know. But it was a great learning experience because he taught me a couple of different things. And one of the things he taught me, which was very important, was, excuse me, there's times when the game can speak for itself. Those are the times where you kind of step back, you evaluate what's going on. He said, but there's many more times when you have to speak for the game. Harry never lost sight of two things. Number one, it should be fun, and number two, it's show business. He was able to do both and weaving it into a great style that will never be emulated.
Yeah, I've read, and we've talked over the years. I mean, I always call this our State of the Union. I think, always wanted to kind of, you never managed, you're too smart to do that, and that's likewise for me. But you always kind of wanted to be interested in baseball. So, you know, there's a lockout. I mean, it ends 99 days. Were you happy? You know, I broadcast for a team that's got maybe a $30 million payroll, and we're trying to compete with the Yankees at $250 and the Red Sox and even the Jays. Were you happy? I mean, with the disparity between what one team's spends, the competitive nature of baseball, or do you think that maybe they could have done a little bit job of balancing that out?
Well, I think there's a couple of different things in that question. One of the things that I was really unhappy with because of what happened and their desire to get in 162 games, every Saturday during the wintertime, Jerry Reinsdorf, Bud Selig, Walt Jocketty, Tony La Russa when he's in town, Doug Collins, Sam Smith, who writes the Bulls, we all got together at Goldman's Deli in Scottsdale, and we talked about baseball. We talked about life. We talked about a lot of different things. And one of the things I said to Jerry and Bud at the time was, and we're talking about the beginning of February, I said, if you don't allow these guys to get at least a 5-week and preferably a 6-week spring training, in your desire to get in 162 games, what's going to happen is you're going to find more injuries this coming year than you've ever seen before in your life. You're going to have decimated pitching staffs. You're going to have guys with legs blown out because they're not going to be under them. And I felt if they accelerated spring training to get in 162, there would be a problem. As we know, the White Sox are just a decimated baseball team, and they're not the Lone Ranger. There's a lot of teams right now still suffering from that. The point being that there's a 6-week spring training for a reason. That is ideal. When there's no lockout and no strike, you have a 6-week spring training. That's not an accident. That's ideal. Anything less is less than ideal. I was frustrated, and unfortunately, at least for the White Sox, it's really come true. We don't have a left fielder. Our center fielder is hobbling. Our first baseman can hardly walk. Our shortstop is not playing today. We lost our number one left-handed dominating reliever all season to Tommy John, and this goes on and on and on. We lost 2 players in this series. We lost Mendick, who was playing great. We lost Engel. We're really running out of players, and I'm not going to blame it all on an accelerated spring training, but I think it's a big part of it. That's what was frustrating. As far as money is concerned, look, local media markets, you know that the Yankees are going to always make more. Mets are always going to make more. The Dodgers will always make more. The question is, how do you compete? Very simply. Scouting and player development have to be much better than anybody else if you're going to compete with the big boys. And for years, the Orioles spent less and at times dominated the East. They can still do it again. I think you've made a good start here. It's just a start. Look, the Yankees look terrific, but if Judge gets hurt, Stanton gets hurt, all of a sudden they lose maybe one pitcher and Garrett Cole, what happens then? Maybe not so good.
Well, there you go. State of the Union, Steve Stone. And that's, of course, why the White Sox are, 10 games difference this year than last year. So anyway, Stevie, great seeing you.
Thank you,
I'll see you
Jim.
in Baltimore
Always a pleasure.
After this weekend, and hopefully the rain will stop.